How many grams of carbohydrate per hour do you recommend? Well, there's a really rough rule of thumb here that we look for 1 gram of carbohydrate per kilo of body weight per hour. So if you're a 60 kilo person, 60 grams of carbohydrate. If you're an 80 kilo person, 80 grams of carbohydrate. And that's roughly the range that we're looking at. It's unlikely that most people are going to be able to absorb more than 80 grams per hour. So if you're a heavier athlete, 80 grams is probably about your upper limit. And if you're lighter than 60 kilos, try and aim for that 60 grams per hour. That's a really good rough rule of thumb. Practice in training, that's the key to all of this. If you find you can take a little bit more, then great. But don't try and force it down, because generally extra calories that you can't consume are just going to sit in your stomach and make you really uncomfortable during the run. Cramping on the run, and what's the best way to solve it? So there's almost certainly 2 components to cramping. The first is how well hydrated and your electrolyte levels. And the second part is how well prepared and conditioned you are for the event. So especially if you're racing in a hot climate or on a hot day, getting your levels of hydration and electrolyte balance correct is absolutely crucial to preventing cramps. There's a large body of evidence that suggests the potassium and the sodium levels in your blood are a really major contributor to whether or not you cramp or not. So make sure you're taking electrolytes that have got the correct balance of electrolytes for you and the way you sweat. So if you don't know what that is, you can Google it and do simple online sweat tests or get sweat tested in person. And the second part of it is, if you're properly prepared for the event physically, that'll minimize the risk of cramps during the event. What's the best supplements for fast recovery after training sessions? So first thing I'm going to check with you is you're already eating a really good, healthy, whole food balanced diet with plenty of veggies, plenty of fruit, plenty of lean protein. As long as you're taking care of that, that's the most important thing before we think about supplements. Now, straight after training, I'm going to recommend you have a protein shake with skimmed milk mixed up with whey protein or something similar, with about 30 grams of protein total in that shake straight after you finish your session. Try and have that within 20 minutes of finishing. That protein getting straight in after the workout is really good at helping you feeling recovered really well. And the last thing I'd say is ensure that you're getting adequate sleep, because that's the number one thing that's going to boost how quick you recover. And if you get the chance, get yourself a little nap in the afternoon as well. That's fantastic at helping you recover quickly. How do I get faster on the bike? So I'm going to break this question down into 3 simple parts. The first thing I want you to do is make sure you've completed a block of FTP builder sessions. That's going to look something like 6 by 5 minutes at 100% of FTP with a 1-minute recovery. So you're looking at 30 to 40 minutes of hard work within an hour session. They are the best, most proven way to increase your overall cycling pure power. The second kind of session you can do is a big gear low cadence session, where you're pushing a bigger gear than usual at a cadence 20 to 30 revs a minute lower than what you would usually push and you're usually comfortable at. So it's great at helping increase that feeling of feeling stronger on the bike and being able to push a bigger gear. And lastly, for IRONMAN and 70.3, make sure you're getting your long ride done every week at an appropriate power level to how you're going to ride on race day. What are some examples of some key bike sessions for 70.3 performance? So first, I'm going to make the assumption that you've already got a good base of long aerobic rides under your belt before we go into the specific preparation. The first key ride I'm going to look at is an interval session specifically aimed at building the power just above what you'll hold at 70.3. So we're going to build you up across a block to the point where you can do 2 by 20 minutes at 90% of FTP with a 5-minute gap in between the two. It's totally fine to build it up in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15, 20 to get yourself to the point you can do 2 by 20. The second ride I'm going to recommend is you replace that long steady ride in the 6 weeks before your event with a long over-under ride, where you're going to do 10 minutes out of every 30 at 90% of FTP and the remaining 20 minutes of each 30 at 70% of FTP. Examples of key run sessions for 70.3. So firstly, let's make sure that our bread and butter of our run training is done. 3 or 4 runs a week, mainly at e-pace, between 30 to 60 minutes long, depending on where you are in your training plan leading up to your race. Secondly, make sure you do a long run every week. You can safely increase your long run by about 15 minutes a week, and let's aim to get that to 2 hours before race day. And I want all of your long runs, so anything over an hour, I want you to do this as 9 minutes run, 1 minute walk. That is going to revolutionize how sore you get the day after a long run and ensure you can train again really, really quickly. And the third most important one here is an M-pace tempo run, or a tempo run done at your goal 70.3 race pace. We're going to build that from 20 minutes through to about 45 minutes at goal race pace, and that's really going to help you dial in how it's going to feel racing come race day. How do I avoid having sore legs after every run? Okay, so there's a couple of things you can check here. The first thing is, let's look at the pace that you're doing these runs at. Let's make sure the pace isn't accidentally or deliberately too fast all the time. I want these runs to feel easy. I want you to be able to have a conversation with somebody as you're running, and often just slowing down the pace of the run is enough to help reduce significantly the amount of soreness an athlete is experiencing. Secondly, I want you to introduce a walk break into your runs. I want you to do a 1 minute walk after 9 minutes of running. So every 10 minutes you end up getting a 1 minute walk break. That is going to revolutionize how you feel the day after a run, especially your long runs, and you're going to find there's hardly any soreness at all. And the third and last thing to check is just that you've changed your shoes recently. If you're getting sore legs, often a new pair of shoes can really help mitigate the effects and that possible soreness. What's the longest run I should do in the lead into an Ironman? Well, I've got a really quick answer for this for you. I don't want any athlete doing a run longer than 3 hours, no matter how fast or slow they are going into an Ironman. And I want all of your long runs doing as a 9-1 run-walk method. The reason I don't want anybody going over 3 hours, even if you're going to be out there considerably longer, is that we have to recover week after week after week in training to be able to train again. And 3 hours is kind of the top end of the sweet spot, where if you do any more of that, you're just going to be too sore and tired to do any meaningful training the next week. If you know that you're going to be out there considerably longer, if it's going to be 5 or 6 hours for you on race day, what I'd recommend is you alternate long runs week in and week out with a really long hike. Take the family out and be out for 5 or 6 hours on your feet. That's going to form really good physical preparation for the challenge that you're going to face come race day. How can I best increase my swim endurance for Ironman? Okay, so first up, this answer is something you're not going to expect. I'm not going to recommend that you do a long continuous swim straight away. What I want you to do is break your endurance swim up into sets of 100 with a 5-second break, because what we want you doing is practicing perfect technique all the way through your swims. And if we try and do a long continuous swim, most swimmers, unless they've swum a lot when they were a kid, their stroke is going to break down and you're just going to end up practicing poor technique. So the first tip is, in the early days at least, that long endurance swim becomes repeating 100s on a 5-second break. When you've got yourself to the point where you can swim 30 by 100, you're up to the 3K mark, that's the perfect point to start swimming 500s on a minute. And when you're doing that, you can then also do long continuous swims. It's great to try those then outdoors in open water in a wetsuit.